like the sort of lack of respect for elders in our culture is like a couple elements. Is one, if you look at human history, for like 99% of it, it was a question of we're in a place, we're in a world, we've got our culture, we've got our village or our, conglomeration of villages, and we know how to survive, but like paper, stone tablets, like those are relatively new inventions, even that, let alone, printing press and computers and all of that. So if you didn't know what to do, if you run into a problem and you don't know how to deal with it, you have to have somebody to ask. And the people who are older, like they may remember when they were your age. Oh, yeah, back in the day, there was this weird drought of the river, but it ended up working out okay, and we just had to like do it, survive for a few months. And this happened long ago, but let me tell you these tales. Like that's all people had. There was no internet to look that up. And so the natural value of experience and of old age was much clearer, and change was a lot slower.
Yeah.
So, you like I'm not gonna ask, well, my grandparents are passed, but like I'm not gonna ask my grandparents like, oh, my computer's messed up. Grandma, how did you deal with computers in your day? I don't know how these things work, like, and rightfully so, but our world is changing so fast that their
Yeah.
experience is not as relevant to the problems we're dealing with. So we forget that we still, we forget that that experience has value because we value utilitarian things so much that they can't help us with because they're the things they used utilitarianly are so old fashioned that the wisdom doesn't apply to the things that we're dealing with.
Yeah. 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 I once heard Mark Andreessen talk about the argument from Plato. I think it's in the Phaedrus. It's kind of funny because Plato is maybe the most famous author or one of the most famous authors in Western history, but he made like a strong argument against writing.
Really, I didn't know that. That's funny.
Yeah, it's I can't it's something like, basically it makes you lazy. It makes you mentally weak because otherwise you have to develop your memory and there's a shared function of education. Plato was very big on that. He almost only I think he only wrote dialogues. Like I think earlier in his life before he met Socrates, there's lore about him wanting to become a playwright and having written plays. But then I might have told you this before, but once he met Socrates and had some epic conversation with him, he burned all his youthful plays and totally changed his life, you know.
Oh, yeah, yeah, yeah.
And
Wow.
yeah, he
Right.
only wrote dialogue. So yeah, there is this kind of idea of education being from teacher to student, and student can always ask questions and get clarification and not spend hours with a written thing and get totally off track and waste time and yeah, and not be developing himself and everything.
Yeah, yeah, it's interesting. It's like I can see, when writing was a little more of a complicated thing, on papyrus or whatever, and you can do it all by hand, like it would be the equivalent nowadays of like when we talk about people who are just stuck in their heads. Like they're just they just live up here. They only think, like, they don't have that sort of any feedback loops coming from their body. Um, they're not in tune with how their body they're not in tune with how their body is in tune with the world around them and the relationships that they're in and all that stuff. Like the data's there, but they can't access it. And it's like at least what I hear from your description, what I hear Plato warning against is the exact same thing that I think a lot of us in our society are dealing with nowadays. I mean, I know from my own experience, it was something that I discovered through my meditation practice, was how to come into the body. There were some specific teachings I got about that really shifted. I was already sitting meditation, and then I got these sort of body-based teachings, and my sitting practice was entirely different. And then, here 15 years later, now my life is very different. Just what I was able to develop out of tuning into those feedback loops, just internally, let alone, not even speaking of it as a social structure, just as a body, as a single entity. Yeah.